All right, thank you
Sounds
everyone for being so patient. Um, Hello and welcome to Networks Live on Demand. I'm Liz Jones, the Blue Star Family's Operations Manager. If you're joining us via the Zoom platform, the only platform that we're using today, you can ask and have questions for Liza. You can ask them using the question and answer box, or you can ask them in the chat feature, and we'll make sure that we bring them forward and that they get answered. One of the things that we do here at the Blue Star Families Careers Program is we kind of always have a thumb on the pulse of what's going on in the military community. And one thing we constantly hear about is jobs and technology. So we have asked Liza Rodewald actually she is the founder of Instant Teams, to come on and talk to us a little bit about careers in technology, how to get them, what path to take, where you can find them, and just a little more information. So I'm not going to go over Liza's very long, awesome bio. I'm kind of going to let her talk about herself because she's been doing this for a long time and knows much better than I do. So thanks, Liza, for being here.
Thanks so much, Liz. I appreciate the invite. Always happy to partner with Blue Star Families and get some good information out to our community. So as Liz mentioned, I'm Liza Rodewald. I'm the CEO, co-founder of Instant Teams, and we have our own technology that enables companies to build remote teams through our software and our platform, and we give those jobs to the military spouse community. So that's what makes us a little unique in this space, is that we're here to help military spouses get remote work, and in one of the positions that we do is the technology field. So fitting that we talk about that today as Instant Teams, that's part of what we do. And also just my personal background. So I have a degree in computer science. I have been in technology, like Liz said, for a long time. That makes me a little old. But I've grown up as a software engineer. That's the part of technology that I've been involved in, developing software, coding, programming, database administration, that type of thing for 15 years prior to starting Instant Teams. So I've been in the technology space a long time. I've also worked from home in the technology space for a really long time. So I worked for a company straight out of college, and then I started off on my own contracting and working from home in the technology space. So it's a very early adopter in the remote workspace as well. So I'm happy to kind of go through tell a little bit about my journey as we kind of describe some of the different roles and get into like the questions on how you guys might be able to make either a career transition or get new skill sets or even beef up the ones that you might already have.
Thanks. Yeah, that's one of the actual questions that came in. We asked for questions beforehand, and somebody was asking, like, how do I get training, or what are the different paths that you can take for training for a career in technology?
Yeah. So first, let's talk a little bit about the different roles, and then we can talk about the certifications or the trainings, because like what you pick kind of depends on what roles that you're interested in. So to kind of briefly go over those so you get an idea. So my background, like I said, software engineering. So the programming, coding, you've probably heard a lot about those types of things. In that space, you can divide out. So if you're interested in programming and coding, and say you have more of a design background, or you like to mess with how things look and you're really into that, then you could be a front end developer. And those are the people that really work on the design aesthetics of websites and applications and mobile applications. They can also be UI, UX designers. So those are the people that are really interested in user flow, how your program works from a user's perspective. You know, there's many things you can do if maybe you have an eye for design, or maybe you had a degree in art, or you're very good at visually putting things together. So there's a whole subset on the tech side for that side of the house. And then you have like what I was, which is more back end. So if you are highly analytical, you like numbers, you like spreadsheets, you like data, you like to dig into details, then like back end development is probably going to be more something that you'll like better and you'll enjoy better. So those are like two sides in there. And of course, those can be breaking down into many job titles. There's also data science, data analytics. So if you have a background in market research or any type of even clinical research, those types of things, like data analytics is a huge opportunity right now in the tech field for you to get into. So those are some other places. Then you can start off even in tech support. So there are a lot of certifications you can go to that help you kind of get your foot in the door by doing some tech support. And that doesn't mean it's low level necessarily, but troubleshooting actual hardware, troubleshooting computers, software systems, troubleshooting, different things within networks in corporations. So they can be very high level jobs, even though it's, tech support. And then you have the whole networking side. So then that side is, the plug and play of the routers, the things that send the information over the internet, like the servers, the equipment. There's a lot of opportunity with Amazon, AWS, and Google Cloud. There's all of these different components where you can kind of plug into there. So that's a very high level of the different types. And so you can kind of look them up and start to see where your interests align. And then you can kind of decide okay, what's my point of entry into this space? Mm-hmm. And I always recommend, the trainings that you can do. My point of entry into the space was I got a degree in computer science. So that's not the only way to learn tech skills, but it's a good way for you to break into the industry. So the certifications, universities are some ways to do that. Boot camps, which some of you've probably heard of some of the online, there's Flatiron School is one of the big boot camps you can sign up for that's completely online. One of my absolute favorites is the Grace Hopper program, and it's completely free. And then you just pay back a percentage of your first year's salary to them after you get your job. So they really give you a lot of support, lots of training, direct job support, and then basically you just help support their foundation by giving back a percentage of that first year's salary. But it's a really strong program and a really good entry point.
Oh, wow. I've never heard of that before. That's pretty amazing.
Yeah.
Do something like that. Oh, yeah. Teresa wants to know, what was the name of that again?
Yeah. It's called Grace Hopper. She actually was one of the first computer scientists. She is a naval officer, wonderful lady that has done many, many things in the computer science field, and that's her foundation that was named after her. So look her up if you don't know. She's got an amazing story and a really, really strong organization. So I like them. There's many others, and we can kind of list them out to go over, but those are kind of the high level ones, right? So you get degrees, you get boot camps, and then you get specific certification tracks. And those are the three main buckets where you can kind of have a point of entry into the tech field.
So if you started out by just you didn't know what you wanted to do, and you kind of had just an overall degree in computer science, and then you kind of with the certifications, can you go in the path that you're more interested in?
Yeah. So my big recommendation would be, if you're going to go the path of getting a degree in computer science, or even associates or some kind of, smaller micro type degree in it, that you intern while you're doing the program. So make sure that you have time to intern, because that will be more valuable to you than the actual degree itself. And you'll be able to get in the door with maybe the first company you work for, or get introductions. You'll have actual experience so that you can, take what you're learning and then apply it. And then you can kind of start to refine where you want to go. So a lot of tech companies, you can move within the company. So maybe you start off as a front end, but then you learn more back end skills and you want to go to the back end. It's easier to move around once you're in. The hardest point of entry is getting in first. And so if you can concentrate and focus on that, then you can kind of move around into different spots, but you got to get in first. And that to me is one of the harder challenges that we have in our community.
Yeah, moving around.
Yeah, so moving around, wanting to work remotely. So working remotely in the tech space is amazing, right? Technology is one of the first early adapters of remote work. Obviously, I've been doing it for 15 years, so it works. But I didn't start there. And that's where it's hard, and for the military spouse community. So think very strategically when you want to get into it, how you're going to have that first point of entry. So you need to spend lots of time networking. You need to invest in a program that's going to help you make connections, so that, because your first job is probably not going to be remote. Your first job, you need to find something local in your community that you can plug into to get the experience. And then once you have experience, remote work becomes easy. But not having experience kind of makes a barrier there, because companies like to have their junior developers and their junior tech people surrounded by more senior, and being remote makes that more difficult. But once you get into the pipeline, then you can start to move into the remote work arena.
I see. So I just wanted to like kind of caption a little bit on that. I did just like a quick Google search probably about a week ago, just like, you know, careers in technology. And I noticed that there were so many different things, and not even just the tech sector in itself. There, like the tech sector kind of like led over into like healthcare and I mean nonprofit, and I mean there's so many options out there, and it's like CRMs, and I was just like, oh my goodness, there's so much out there. But yeah, definitely I feel like just kind of like doing a search and seeing like where your interests lie, and then going that way. I mean, I know you talked a little bit about like the boot camps and the training, the different trainings and stuff like that. I mean, is there anyone that you find that's better or can get your foot in the door better than?
A lot of the boot camps will try to work with you to get your first job. So if you can find one, so there's virtual ones to do, which I know is ideal mostly for most spouses, because you're doing it at odds ends of time in your day and you're trying to move and stuff. But I will say, if you can attend one in person, do it, because you'll get more value out of it, and it's easier to go through it with people that are going through it at the same time you are, because you can ask questions in real time. Like if you're very new to like programming development, it's very hard to learn that by yourself remotely. So just knowing that going in. And so if you can't, say if you need to do the program online, well then go find some meetups that are in your area that are coding groups, so that you can go and start plugging into some of those. That way you can have some people to bounce ideas off. You can talk about where you're stuck in some of the things. You can hear about how they're working, what they're doing, locally, what the landscape is like. So even though you do things maybe virtually, do plug in on a local level. Meetup groups are a good place for that. MilSpouse Coders, they have their own chapters now, and Operation Code. Both of those are good resources for the military spouse community, or the military community in general, the families and everyone.
Oh, what was that again? That I've never heard of that before.
You've never heard of Operation Code or MilSpouse Coders? Oh, I'm happy to introduce them to you guys, because they're amazing. Yeah, so Operation Code is for veterans and military spouses, military families in general. And their whole mission is to help veterans and military spouses get into technology careers. They have coding groups, they do hackathons, they have partnerships with bigger companies to help get like internships and jobs. They have a very, very active Slack community that you can get involved in, saying, hey, I'm trying to learn Python or whatever it is you're wanting to do. Anybody working on this at the same time? So it's very collaborative. And MilSpouse Coders was started by a military spouse to kind of do it for the military spouse community specifically. So they don't do veterans or anything like that, but they have pop-ups throughout the United States and some online study groups. So you can get into the online study group there and say, hey, I'm learning this technology. Anybody else learning this at the same time? What are you guys doing to connect with jobs? So just to kind of share information and get support.
Oh, that's awesome. That is a very neat little tip that you have there. Another one of the training, another one of the questions that we got was, oh, I'm sorry. Sorry. My dogs are going crazy. Here we go, work from home, working virtually.
Yeah. You never know.
That we got was just where to look for careers in technology, as far as like, is it just like your average like Indeed, or is it going to be, certain specific job boards?
Yeah. Well, first of all, you can go to instantteams.com and create a profile with us, because we do fill technology jobs. So if you have an interest and you have some skills, you can do that. We are a good resource for that. Also, searching some of the job boards. One place that's good, I would say, is to go that maybe you would not think about normally, is to go to angellist.co. And that's where all of the startups post their job openings. And they're usually more flexible in hiring. So you can pitch yourself to them. So maybe they're hiring for a full stack developer with 10 years of experience. You can always apply and say, hey, I'm learning this technology. I'm in here. I'm willing to like intern with your company, you know, and kind of work your way in some of those doors. So don't be afraid to contact and reach out to companies in order to get a position for yourself. So I actually got my very first internship that way. So when I was in college, I applied for a full-time developer role that had many years of experience. And I was like, hey, I don't have this experience yet, but I'm learning this technology. I'm a fast learner. I'm willing to get in here, jump in. What would you think about bringing me on as an intern? The company had never had interns before, and they hired me. So, you know, don't be afraid to just make a path for yourself. Angellist.co is a good place to kind of mine, like, what are these new companies? They're usually in high growth stages. They're usually trying to bring on people fast. They usually don't have tons and tons of extra money. So they're willing to do maybe an internship or some kind of work out something with you for trade some of your time for some experience with maybe a smaller pay, just to get your foot in the door so that you can actually go out the next time and get, you know, the higher level job.
It does sound like interning seems to be like almost like the key once after you get like that initial education down, moving into like an interning position or an on-the-job training position so you can kind of build up skills and then go on to bigger and better things, I guess.
Yeah, so it's technology is an interesting field in the fact that you have to know how to do it, right? And it's a very hands-on type thing. So if you don't have the skill set built up and you can't prove that you know it, you've got to do that in some way. You've got to build yourself a portfolio so that you can get the type of job. So just think of it as like a stair step. Like, you won't be interning forever, but it'll be 6 months long, 9 months long, however, in order to build up that resume for yourself so that you can go get the next type of job that you want.
Yeah, I kind of wanted to open it up a little bit for questions. If anyone has any, please go ahead and ask them. You can use the question and answer box or the chat feature. Let me give it a couple seconds. I know it's a little bit of a delay. There we go. There. Awesome. Well, it doesn't look like anything is coming through. I don't want to take up too much of your time today. Is there anything else that you wanted to add?
Well, I just want to mainly say, you know, don't be afraid of technology, but be definitely realistic in your plan of action. And as long as you're very purposeful in what you're doing. So I am going to take this boot camp certification in order to break into this industry, and then have a strategic plan of networking, plugging into those groups. Like, you know, doing the boot camp is one thing, or the degree program, but you have to be very intentional about why you're doing it and where you're trying to go with it. And as long as you build that plan in, then, you know, it'll be successful. But if you just concentrate on the certification itself, like, I just got to get through the certification and then I will do that stuff, then that's kind of the wrong approach to take. You need to be very proactive from the beginning, because the relationships you build in that will help you land the next job, will help you get to the next point. So the boot camp, the more you plug into those people, the more they'll help you find jobs. The more you plug into the people at the university, the more they'll help you get your first internship. You know, just make sure you're very involved as you can be in those, and then get in those online groups as well, so that you have kind of two plans of attack there. One other thing to think about is if you are already in an industry. So technology touches any industry, you know, anything you can imagine. So if you're already in healthcare, you know, look at some of the healthcare type technology jobs. You know, you may want to get a certification in a specific software that, you know, hospitals use. And then you can go in and start helping them with that. And then you can use that to step your way into maybe starting to program some of those things in the hospital software. You can do that in each industry. So if you're already familiar with one, you become sort of a subject matter expert in that field. And then you also get the tech skills. And so then you have two really great value adds when you're going to a company to get a job.
Awesome. We actually did get some questions in. Victoria wants to know if you feel there's any enthusiasm or support from these companies looking to hire military spouses into tech roles, although they may be coming from a different background.
Yes. So there's a lot of interest in hiring military spouses as a whole, and there's a lot of free certifications and training. So there are a lot of opportunities there. I will say some of the companies are trying to figure out how they can position these types of apprenticeships or internships. For example, GitHub has one to where it brings on brand new, newly certified technology programmers into their group, even remotely, and tries to give you a mentor in there. So some of these companies are thinking about it and positioning, but don't be afraid to create that opportunity yourself with a company. So if you see a company, they have a military hiring initiative, you can see those on their websites through the different partnerships. Reach out to them and say, this is what I'm doing. Do you have suggestions? I mean, a lot of times they'll help you figure out what the point of entry is into their own organization. So you can work from there too.
Thanks. We actually have another question from Sherry, and she wanted to know, what is the outlook of cybersecurity and typical educational path for it?
So cybersecurity is obviously one of the hottest tech jobs. There's definitely a lot of room for that. Going to, depending on if you have a degree or not, that's also maybe a thing to think about if you've already got like a bachelor's degree, then maybe the degree program is not the best. Maybe you should just do one of the certifications. That way you're not, creating that all again just for the tech skills itself. But there are several organizations that give the cybersecurity training. The IVMF program through Syracuse University has a track that you can take in that. If you have like security clearances and cybersecurity, then that's always great. The one thing to think about on those is if you want to work remotely, they're a little bit harder to land remotely because a lot of that is protected and sensitive type information. And so you have to be plugged into their systems. So maybe like a bigger organization would be good to look at if you're looking at the remote work aspect of it, because you'll have to VPN, like private connections into their networks in order to do the jobs that they have you doing in the cybersecurity field. But it's definitely a great path. If you're interested in that, I would definitely suggest it.
And here's a question actually that is very specific to you. Would Instant Teams offer internship placements? And that I don't know.
Yeah, so we have worked with a few companies as long as they're paid. So Instant Teams doesn't do anything that requires any spouse to ever volunteer their time. Everything that we have ever done from the beginning is paid. So that's one of the things that we do. So if we'll work with a company as long as it's a paid internship, we just did one. So they're more like junior, very entry-level dev positions. So they may not be titled internships exactly, but it's the same thing pretty much. A lower amount of pay for the experience, but you still get paid while you're doing it. So we do have some of those. So if you have went through the boot camp, you have got some of the training and you're ready for that kind of step, then I would definitely say create a profile on our site and tell us the technology that you're working with so that we know you're there. So when a company comes to us, we can say, hey, we have a few people in this area that may be a good fit for your company. What do you think about it? We're always proactively creating those opportunities with the companies that we work with.
And then we had another question about what fields have the most opportunity to work remotely? And I think that would be a personal opinion question based on the fact that you've been doing this for so long with Instant Teams, and like what's your feel out there?
Yeah, so the ones that I see the easiest are on the software development side. A very easy way for you to get kind of plugged into some of that is like WordPress developers. So WordPress is an extremely popular website, CMS that a lot of companies use, and it evolves with plugins. So plugins, and these plugins are built in PHP mostly, and you can code them to change them. So it doesn't necessarily, you don't have to have like tons of experience to get these kinds of positions. You just have to kind of study it and know how to use it. And hey, I can work on this plugin, I can work on that plugin. And that's like a really good way to like kind of baby step your way into programming. So it's one that I suggest to military spouses a lot. Like if you're interested in it, like go take some WordPress classes, like get into the bones, the back end of WordPress, and you can get those jobs. You can freelance and get those kinds of opportunities really, really easily. So that's a good way to kind of break in, especially if you're studying, say maybe you're studying Python or something else, like learn some of those other skills at the same time, and then you can get a job doing that while you're stepping your way to being a Python developer.
Awesome. Thanks. Another question. We got a couple more.
Okay.
I have a bachelor's degree in liberal arts. What programs or certificates would you recommend to make the transition into the tech field? That's interesting. If you already kind of have the foundation.
Yeah. So liberal arts, do you have a specific area in liberal arts that you focused on or that you enjoy? And that might help me tell you what might be good. But if you have time, type that in. Otherwise, I can just answer it in general. But yeah, I think on that side, if you kind of focus on, okay, what area of tech you want to get in and see which one would align best with the skills and everything that you have from your degree. So when in your degree time, you made relationships, you made connections, there was part of that program probably that you liked more, and then take those skills that you already have and then translate them. So I mentioned earlier, like the UX, UI, front end development, like the more visual part of technology. Like if you did do art or you did, you like the communication side of what you did prior. So like user experience is very communication driven. There's also like product managers. So people that are in the tech space that aren't necessarily tech people. Okay. So a product manager would be like developing the vision of what the product's doing from like the customer side and a visual side. And they work with the development team in order to create the product. You're not actually coding, but you're still in the tech space. So there's a lot of jobs like product managers, program managers, project managers that you can still take your existing skills, apply them to the technology space and not have to necessarily learn the actual coding that's going on, but you can still be in the technology field.
Okay. That makes perfect sense. After you like
right? So it's a lot to cover in 30 minutes. But
oh yeah. I mean, there's still some questions, and I don't even know if we're going to be able to get to them all. As far as somebody wrote in that they have, they're in their second semester of computer science major in college and transferring to a university. Would you suggest a bachelor's degree, a boot camp, or a certificate? So yeah, that's
well, I would definitely suggest you finish out your degree in computer science because the connections you'll make at the university are going to really help you. So connect with the professors, like get involved while you're there and build relationships because they're the people. I still talk to my professors that I went in college, way back in the day. So I still talk to them. They're still supporters of mine. So I think there's a lot of benefit that comes to that university besides just the degree itself. That's where companies go to find interns. So companies go to the universities to get interns. So that's a really great spot for you to find that first point of entry. So I would definitely stay there. If you're already there, stay there. Otherwise, the boot camps and certificates are good for learning skills. But really what you're trying to do with boot camps and certifications is get a point of entry into the door. So, that's really the main goal because after you get in the door, nobody cares if you're certified really in anything anymore. They just care, can you do the job? Do you have the skills to do the job?
Right.
So really you're talking about the best point of entry. So you look at your lifestyle, look at what you can commit to, look at your network, and then figure out which one of those three makes the most sense for you to get that point of entry into it.
Thanks. We got one more question before we wrap it up. What type of training or certs would you go along with learning WordPress?
Okay. So WordPress is a pretty easy, there's so many like free things out there to learn for WordPress. So I wouldn't bother trying to get a certification in it because again, that's going to be one of those things where people just want to know, can you code this plugin or not? Like the certification is not going to tell them the answer to that or not. So I would do like the Lynda classes, lynda.com, sign up for that. They have tons of training in there. YouTube, you can go to YouTube and learn how to do just about anything. So there's so many free like WordPress classes on YouTube that I would suggest doing some of that. And then find somebody that will let you play with their site. Say, hey, I will work on it. You know, let me get in there and do something for you. I mean, you can find somebody that has a WordPress site, guarantee it. So you could post on the spouse pages and be like, hey, what bloggers have a lot of the websites, you know, they have a lot of things. Let me start with configuring some plugins, then start with like getting into the code of it and just learning how it works. Like that is one of the easier ones I say to get, that I think there is to a point of entry, because you don't have to necessarily understand all the programming structures in order to be able to do something pretty quick with WordPress, but it'll be a good like first entry for you to be able to see like the code and the structure and how that works.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Liza. I feel like I learned a ton because I really did not know anything about, the tech industry, even though I do use technology every day. But as far as like breaking into the industry and like what is needed, but it sounds like, you covered a lot. It sounds like it is a huge, huge industry. And I think you just like basically you broke the ice and kind of helped maybe some people find out where they need to be or where they want to be.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I mean, joining the meetup groups locally is a great way to start talking to people because you'll get people in those meetups that do all kinds of different things. And it'll be a good way for you to be like, I'm thinking about getting into this space. What do you do? And who do you work for? And how do you like it? And just start talking to people. And that'll help kind of give you a good guidance and direction of what path you might want to take. Because like we mentioned, there are so many different ones that you can take, and tech touches everything, right? Mm-hmm. So there's a lot of brainstorming you can do on like, okay, my past experience, my relationships, my network, what's a good entry for me in this space, and what do I enjoy and want to do with it, and be very strategic about it.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you so much for coming on today. If anyone has any additional questions, you can reach out to me at ljones@bluestarfam.org, and I can shuffle you over to Liza if there's a question that I cannot answer, which is probably all of them. But and if you want to reach out to Instant Teams, I actually put the website in the chat feature, and it will also be located in the description for Facebook. All right. Well, thank you so much for joining us, and enjoy the rest of your day because it's still morning there.
I will. Thank you so much for having me. It's always good to be on.
Thanks. Talk soon.
All right.
Bye.
Okay.